This is Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. I'm Catherine Bullock from Toronto, Ontario. Some news headlines. Trudeau was attacked by the all-party leaders during last night's English language debate. Liberal leader and current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was attacked by the other leaders at last night's English language debate. Trudeau was blamed by Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole for producing an inflation crisis, while Jagmeet Singh, the new Democratic Party leader, cornered the Liberal leader for failing to address the housing situation. Yves-François Blanchet, leader of the Bloc Québécois, argued that the Trudeau administration discriminated against seniors when it distributed income assistance. All the party leaders also continued to be skeptical of Trudeau for calling an election, especially with the fall of Afghanistan. During the debate, Trudeau tried to prove his points repeatedly, but was shut down again by another argument. The debate has ended with O'Toole now having a lead over Trudeau in the polls. Projected results of the 2021 federal elections. According to CBC's poll tracker, the probability of the Conservative Party to win more seats but no majority is 38%, and 4% to win a majority. The probability of the Liberal Party to win most seats but no majority is 45%, and 13% to win a majority. The poll currently stands at 33.5% for the Conservatives, 31.6% for the Liberals, 20% for the New Democrats, 5.8% for Bloc Québécois, 5.3% for the People's Party, and 3% for the Green Party. 43 Canadian citizens have left Afghanistan in the first large-scale departure after August 31st. The first large-scale departure of foreigners from Afghanistan since the US deadline of August 31 has included 43 Canadian citizens. Qatar facilitated this flight from Kabul to Doha. On board were also US, German, and Hungarian citizens. Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau said, "Canada has been working closely with Qatar to ensure safe passage for Canadian citizens still in Afghanistan who are seeking to leave, and we thank them for their support." And finally, the federal election is not addressing Islamophobia. Mustafa Farouk, president of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, says that the federal election campaign is not addressing the issue of anti-Muslim racism. He wants the federal government to appoint an Islamophobia special envoy and to contest Quebec's Bill 21, which prohibits government employees from wearing religious symbols in the interest of secularism. The Conservative Party claims to stand with Uyghur Muslims. They also promised to double funding for the Security Infrastructure Program, which grants money to places of worship to improve their security, and they say they would simplify the application process. However, when a CTV journalist questioned O'Toole why words like Islamophobia and racism aren't in the party platform, he responded with, "I said, I want more Canadians, regardless of their sexual orientation, their color, and their religion, to join our mission." He did not specifically address the issue of Islamophobia. That's it for our news headlines. We turn now to an interview with a mental health advocate, educator, and researcher about how to talk to kids about 9/11. I interviewed Dr. Farah Islam earlier today. We have with us today to discuss an issue in depth a mental health expert. This is the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this month, and a new resource from American University in DC and cooperation with the Center for Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University, Dr. Amara Duquia. She's released a teaching kit for teachers who want to have 9/11 commemorative ceremonies in the classroom. Her research has revealed that Muslim students experience a spike in bullying from either their classmates or, unfortunately, their teachers during the 9/11 commemoration ceremonies. Now, I haven't come across similar statistics for Canada, but we, as the big neighbour up the north, do have also the difficulties of anti-Muslim bullying in classrooms and how to talk to the kids about 9/11, either as a teacher or as a parent. So we're very pleased to welcome today Dr. Farah Islam, who is a senior fellow at the Yaqeen Institute. She's a mental health researcher, advocate, and educator, and she's going to talk to us about this. Welcome to the show, Dr. Farah.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Kathy. I'm so happy to be here.
So what do you know about, through your research in the Muslim community, about how 9/11 affects Muslim mental health, either as adults or as children?
That's a fantastic question. When I've worked with Muslim adults, talking to them about the impact of Islamophobia on their mental health, they've often talked about how they feel cut off and disenfranchised, as in they feel excluded from society and from life, particularly from job opportunities when they come to Canada, that it isn't the open environment, the open home that they had hoped to move to. When it comes to young people and to children, a lot of educators as well as youth mental health advocates often talk about how Islamophobia and bullying in the classroom can lead to mental health issues like depression and anxiety for young people. And so absolutely, this is something that we need to address. And I think it's wonderful that we have this wonderful resource out there for teachers to be able to have those conversations. CARE also came out with a wonderful toolkit to help students and teachers talk about 9/11. So I think that's also another wonderful resource that we can point teachers and classrooms towards.
Well, that's a good resource to know about. Now, one of the other hats that I wear is I lecture at the University of Toronto and I teach Islamic politics. And you talked about anxieties, and I can share a vulnerable moment. I mean, I have anxieties of my own, and term always starts close to the anniversary. So one year, 9/11 actually happened on the first day of class. And I'm teaching Islamic politics, and we know that the students arrive with what I call the CNN version of Islam, which is, that Muslims are terrorists and Islam is violent and women in headscarves are oppressed. And I'm standing there in the classroom with my hijab on the anniversary of 9/11 I decided it was the elephant in the classroom and I should talk about it, but there's a tiny little part of me that was feeling embarrassed to be standing there in my scarf connected to, this faith that's supposed to have done these things. So can you sort of maybe share even your own experiences or vulnerabilities or shed light on that?
Oh, that's really brave, Dr. Kathy. I really appreciate how you shared that. An interesting story that comes to mind, you're speaking about your personal experiences. I actually went to middle school and high school in the Middle East, and so in an American school. So when 9/11 happened, I was in that, of course, American school environment. And I remember how shocking it was that some of our American teachers actually stopped speaking to the Muslim students in the school. And consider that, we're in a Muslim country. We are surrounded by Muslims. You are, entrenched in what is supposed to be Muslim culture and Muslim life. And even then, there was that incredible backlash and that incredible hatred and that hostility that was very palpable. Even as a young child, as a young person, that was something that we could feel from our teachers. And so something that is very important to do as educators, as parents, whenever we do need to speak to our children or to our students about 9/11, first and foremost, just like actually Dr. Kathy, you started out that way as well, to do some introspection, right? It requires taking some time, take a breath, and really just focus on yourself, on what are your thoughts and your emotions around 9/11, whether the anniversary, whether there are incidents that you've gone through, whether you've been bullied or harassed or experienced Islamophobia. What does that bring up for you? What are those emotions that come up? And I understand there can be feelings of shame, and it is very difficult to talk about. But first and foremost, it always starts with that introspection, and it can be, write it out to yourself in a journal, or talk to yourself or talk to a trusted confidant. But it is important to have that sort of space for a sounding board to understand where your emotions are at. And as parents, we have to talk to our children often with these sort of difficult, uncomfortable emotions and feelings that we may be going through. But first, sort of centering ourselves and grounding ourselves before we talk to our children is an important first step.
I will ask you about that, but in a minute. But you just said something that clicked with something that Dr. Amira had found in her research. Two things, actually. She talked about it was strategies for what you should do in the 9/11 commemorations, one of which is to mention also the Muslims who died in the Twin Towers and also the Muslims who were heroes as first responders. But she also talked about what not to do. And one of the things was, she said, a teacher could come in very solemn and say, on this fateful day, and get very solemn about it, which can convey, which she suggested was the adult not processing their own emotions properly. And that can give a negative feeling to the children in the classroom. So I find it really interesting that you've given that advice about the first step of self-reflection. And then the other thing she pointed to that teachers sometimes do is call on the Muslim students to condemn the attacks. So that must be really awful, to be in a classroom and have your teacher say to you, please condemn the attacks. So are you aware of, let's ask you now, the sort of like the do's and don'ts of how to talk to children about this?
That's wonderful, Dr. Kathy. I agree. Muslim children should never be put on the spot to be made into Muslim ambassadors. That's not our role in the classroom, and we should never put anybody into that hot seat. That's subhanAllah, that's just very, very difficult. What are some of those do's and don'ts? So absolutely. One of the sort of great bits of advice, and for parents, for educators, is that when we're talking to young people, start out with questions, with open-ended questions. Ask them, what do you know about 9/11, or what do you know about some of the events that have occurred on this particular day? What have people been talking about? Have you heard anything? What are some of your emotions around it? How are you feeling around it? Just to get their sense of where they're at, where their emotions are at, and their knowledge level, where that's at. We always want to, as educators or as parents, we want to be those listening ears. We don't want to be the ones who are talking, having that top-down approach, talking more than our children or our students. In this sort of a situation where it's an uncomfortable or difficult conversation, it's more of our role to be there as a listener, as a guide, as a confidant, to really understand, to help the young people process and express their emotions around it.
So that's a do. And do you think that there are any special do's that would be, let's say you're in a public classroom and there are some Muslim students and some non-Muslim students, is there a differentiation, or is it just to do that for everyone?
I think asking those questions, those honest, open-ended questions, can work for both Muslim and non-Muslim environments. And then for sure, an important do, especially when we're having a mixed environment, is to be on the lookout for any kind of bullying, any kind of Islamophobia. It's very important if we're talking about the tragic events that happened on 9/11, marrying that and coupling that also with the importance of how important it is to fight prejudice and to fight injustice. And to talk, for example, we can talk in the classroom about, some of the sort of the atrocities or what has come about politically as a result of 9/11. Some of those policies that have emerged, whether it's in the United States or in Canada with Bill 21, et cetera, but having sort of that frank conversation about how political events can lead to such policies, and then what we have to do as a community, as a political sort of conscious sort of force in society to change and affect change. That sort of empowerment is really important and hopeful for young people to hear.
So we have about a minute left. Do you have any important don'ts that you'd like to share, or any other tips that you think we should know about before we leave?
So definitely do not make a young child or a young Muslim, single them out as your Muslim ambassador. Please do not discount any incidents of Islamophobia. If a Muslim student does come to you with an incident where they do feel that they have been harassed or bullied, to listen and to take that and to validate those expressions of emotion. As well, that there are no negative or positive emotions in this. Everybody should be allowed to express or to have the emotions that they have around this incident and in this tragedy, how it's affected them in their lives, and to be open to our students or to the young people in our lives, and that allowing them to have that space to express that. And one sort of way to sort of end off this kind of a discussion is to, as a classroom or with all your children, create something together, create art together, do like a puppet show together if you have young children, but allow space for play or creativity so that they can have a space to actually creatively and in a way empower themselves to work through and process some of those big emotions that you've just spoken about.
Well, that's a really great tip. What a great way to end. We thank you very much for your time, Dr. Farah Islam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kathy.
That's it from us. Assalamu alaikum. This is Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Stay safe and God bless.